Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, hello. If you are returning, welcome back. Thank you so much for sticking around. I really appreciate you. So today we're going to be ending the month of June with just a good old-fashioned fat acceptance TikTok reaction because I found some winners and I want to talk about them. And that's all I have to say about that. So let's just get into it. But before we get into today's video, I want to thank today's video sponsor, Akiflow. Now, Akiflow is the ultimate productivity tool designed for busy professionals. Whether you're an entrepreneur working in a corporate environment, or if you're someone like me who has a full-time 9-to-5 quote-unquote normal job and also has what has now basically become a full-time YouTube channel on like side business. Akiflow simplifies your life by seamlessly combining time blocking and integrations into one intuitive platform. If you know me, then you know that I have a bit of a spicy brain. It can be really hard for me to compartmentalize between my full-time job tasks and the stuff that I have to do for my channel on the side. And I thought I had a pretty good system going with making to-do lists and all of that. But then Akiflow came into my life and I was like, oh my God, this is so much better. Akiflow simplifies time management by allowing users to block time directly on their calendar, which helps improve focus, minimize procrastination, which is a huge issue of mine. It also enhances just overall productivity. The universal inbox tool is so cool because it will go collect tasks from platforms like Gmail, Asana, Slack, and Notion and put them all into one simple little to-do list for you to organize and block out yourself. And the AI Copilot truly is a copilot because it will learn your user habits to make intelligent suggestions and auto-assign tasks based on your individual preferences. As someone who takes so much time planning my weeks and my days and my months to the point where the planning of the tasks becomes a task itself, Akiflow has truly been a game changer for me, and I cannot recommend it enough. If you want to give Akiflow a whirl for yourself, be sure to use the link down below in my description to enhance your own productivity. Thank you so much to Akiflow for sponsoring today's video and for being a recurring sponsor on my channel. And as always, thank you so much to you guys for continuing to interact with my content so that brands like Akiflow want to keep working with me because it truly helps me more than I could ever tell you. Yeah, that's it. So let's just get back into the video.
The thing about being fat and being okay with it is that people of all sizes, mostly people that are thin or are on a weight loss journey or whatever, they get really upset about it. And they want me to be miserable. They want me to be upset that I'm fat. And when I'm not, and when I actually like it, and when I actually have good style, when I'm actually having fulfilling sex, they get really upset about it. And one of the only conclusions that can be drawn from that for me is that oftentimes, in my opinion, is about their own hatred of themselves and their own inability to actually love themselves. And so when they see people like me that are fat and actually are completely fine with it, it is so enraging to them because there is like something that gets brought up in them that they feel like they need me to hate myself so that I can be alongside them as they hate themselves into thinness.
Okay, so this creator is a new person to me on the TikTok, but I went on their platform and I found some other videos that aren't going to be in this one, but will definitely be in future videos because some of their takes are something else. And so, but this is something that I see a lot of fat activists talk about, is that they feel like formerly fat people or just people who have lost weight, like hate fat people and just can't stand seeing fat people being happy and not wanting to lose weight and whatever. And like, do I understand that there are some creators on the internet who have very strong opinions on fat people, and like oftentimes, more often than not, it comes off as like, oh, you just like don't like fat people, like you just hate fat people, like 100%. I know those kinds of content creators exist, and a lot of them have been overweight or like morbidly obese at one point in their life. I think where a lot of people are coming from who have lost weight and maybe were fat the majority of their lives, myself included, is that I will never tell somebody what to do with their body. That is not something I will ever do because that's just not what I'm about as a person, because it doesn't affect me directly. But what I have an issue with is, or not an issue with, but what I like talking about is how much my life has improved since I did since I lost weight. And even when I gained some back, like it was still overall like a net positive in terms of like my life before I lost weight, my life after. And that had nothing to do with a lot with like the mental part of it. It was more just like what I could do physically that changed, that then made my life a lot better. And the things that I didn't have to worry about anymore, like, and all of that kind of stuff. I will never, ever be mad at seeing a fat person happy just being fat. Like, if that's your thing, I do not care. But like, I just think we should have honest conversations about people who have decided to lose weight and who then are talking about their experiences after they've lost weight in a positive light. I think that's okay. But again, I think it's really interesting that a lot of the justifications that fat activists use to remain fat have to do with vanity and desirability. And I have had this video on my to-do list for such a long time, and I will talk about it soon because I think it ties into just social media as a whole. But fat activism's obsession almost with being desirable and being seen as desirable and outward vanity is just something that's so fascinating to me when like overwhelmingly they don't want the conversation to be about their physical appearance, meaning like their weight and all of that. Like, I think it's really interesting that this creator brought in, like, they don't like seeing me having good sex and like looking good. Like, who cares? I don't know. Like, for me, the amount of sex I'm having, or like the quality of sex I'm having. Also, I feel like I'm probably gonna have to bleep this out so YouTube doesn't get mad at me, so I'm sorry. This is pretty early in the video and YouTube gets mad. I hate that, just an FYI. But like, the amount of that I'm doing and like the quality of it, like, literally has nothing to do with me as a person. I say that for other people too. Like, the amount of you are or are not having and like the like quality of it does not change my view of you as a person or like how worthy you are of me to me as a person. I also, as someone who has been fat the majority of my life and has been bigger than I am now the majority of my life, whenever I see a fat person winning, like, I still get pretty excited about it, to be honest. Even when Tess Holliday was on the cover of British Cosmo, okay? I thought that was so fucking cool. All right, like, I thought that was cool. I still think it's cool. Given all the context about Tess, take that all out, okay? But just her being on that cover was cool to me. I don't know, because for me, when I see them talk about this in such a way, this concept in such a way too, like, I can't help but think of like the young girls who are seeing this and are like, oh, well, nobody wants me to be happy because I'm fat. That's how I view this messaging and how she's saying it. Nobody wants me to be happy because I'm fat. I just don't think that helps the conversation at all either. I just thought this was such an odd TikTok, because I do understand that there are creators who have lost weight who now talk about fat people as if they never were one. I understand the problem with that, but I think the majority of us are just talking about it from our own lived experiences and like being like, hey, things can get better. Those pains you're feeling, those can go away, or like that kind of stuff. And it's not because we hate fat people. Like, I certainly do not hate fat people. I mean, I am fat people still, so like there is that aspect, but even people who are smaller than me, like, I don't think, or that's an issue at all. Okay, on to the next one.
I hate to break it to you, but fat phobia is actually a choice and being fat isn't. And even if you don't agree with me that fatness isn't a choice, you still don't have to choose to be fat phobic. You don't need to come into our comment. You don't need to call us names. You don't need to dismiss us and discredit us. You don't even need to do all the mental gymnastics it takes just to try and manufacture an argument that is completely false. If, as you say, literally no one cares you're fat, then leave us the fuck alone.
Okay, so this one's gonna be like a two-parter because someone commented on this and then this creator responded to the comment. So someone commented saying, being fat is absolutely a choice. I chose to be fat for many years, making up every excuse as to why I couldn't lose weight. Then I chose not to be fat anymore, and I'm working damn hard to get to wherever I can be. If you're happy being fat, great. If you're not happy and want to do something about it, great. But either way, it's a choice. And I agree with that comment. But this is what this creator said to them.
Oh, Zoe. Being fat is absolutely not a choice. Being fat is absolutely not a choice. Now, I know there's a number of videos where I said that for some people it's not a choice. And then I was like, Melanie, who are these some people? Who is it you think is a choice? Well, so I would like to go on record. being fat is absolutely not a choice for anyone. Now, people who come into the comments with these kinds of this nonsense, because Zoe, you're not the first and you will not be the last, right? You're like, being fat's a choice, it was a choice for me, and I was just lazy, and I made excuses, and now I work really hard, and blah, blah. First of all, that is all fat phobia. This is a fat phobic narrative. This idea that we can all just try harder, right? That everything is just down to food and exercise. It completely ignoring all the other factors that can lead to weight gain. And I'm not going to do a video of all the factors because I've done that in the past and no one gives a shit. Because those of you who have internalized fat phobia, you're not wanting to hear what I have to say. Google's free. If you actually care, you can Google that or you can watch one of my other videos. But there are a number of factors. The one that I've not really spoken about the most is the one that I think affects a lot of us. And that is diet cycling. Because diet cycling leads to weight regain. We know this. This has been studied. And for me, I did not choose to be fat. I was put on my first diet when I was like 9 or 10. I wasn't fat. I was never going to be skinny because that's not how I'm built. Genetically, you could see that was never going to be the case. But I was put on my first diet before I had full autonomy over my food. That was not a choice. This cycle, 20 years. Over 20 years of diet cycling. And all I ended up with was poor mental health, disordered eating behaviours, and a whole lot more weight that I'd regained. And so I did make a choice. I made a choice to stop dieting. I made a choice to pursue intuitive eating. I made a choice to unlearn all of the diet culture, the diet industry, all of the rules, all of the racism and colonialism and fat phobia that I had been taught through dieting. I decided to unlearn all that, practice unlearning all that over a period of time. I still unlearn it now. And I decided to replace that knowledge with things that I should have been taught as a kid, but I wasn't. That was not my choice. It's my choice now, but it wasn't my choice then. And so in some way, you could say that I'm now choosing to be fat. The way I see it is I'm choosing to respect my body. I'm choosing to listen to my body. I'm choosing to honour my body. I'm choosing to feel neutral about my body and some days maybe love it. What I'm choosing not to do is continue down this path that was actually more damaging for my health. That's just my experience. That doesn't mean that's the experience of every other person out there, because there's a lot of people in this world and everyone's experience is different. But I'm so fed up of people trying to come into the comments with their fat phobic narratives telling me that fatness is a choice. Because here's the thing. Comments like this, what I know is that you thought it was your fault and you still think it was your fault, and that you still think that being thin or thinner is morally better. You still believe there is moral failing in being a fat person. You still think that there is more worth in being thin. That's a choice as well. Like, I choose not to see it that way. And we all make choices, as you said. You can choose to unlearn your fat phobia.
In response to that response, the person that this creator responded to said, "You're right, I do think it was my fault that I ended up how I was, because it was my fault. No one else was shoving unhealthy fatty foods down my neck, making me eat many calories and not do any exercise. That was on me. And I didn't decide to do something about it until it started massively impacting my physical and mental health. It's got nothing to do with thinking being thin is morally right. It changed for me, and changing my mental health and physical health has improved dramatically. I don't buy into people's BS about how it's not a choice. If that makes me fat phobic, then so be it. Like I said, whichever path people choose to follow is fine as long as they're happy." And the creator just responded, "Wow." So after those, there's a lot to unpack here. Do I think that there's a certain amount of our body weight and our just like how our bodies are composed and stuff that is not a choice for us? 100%. Like I do think genetics play a role in that kind of stuff. Just from what I have learned, like I'm not super duper educated in the topic, but from what I do know, like I do think genetics play a role in weight and things like that. But does that mean it is impossible for you to lose weight if you want to? No, that is not the case either. In very, very rare instances, that is the case, but majority of the time, it's not that. I think saying being fat is not a choice is kind of wild. I think maybe what I could see the argument being with that is like getting fat might not be fully your choice, because if you have been fat your entire life, like that is just a result of like the foods you were eating as a child, like all of that kind of stuff. There's a lot of factors at play there, right? So I can understand that. But I do think when you start complaining and talking about being fat online, and you're not talking about just genuine like systemic issues that do exist, in my opinion, like things like how doctors treat fat people, etc., etc. I think when you're talking about just things like clothes and whatever, I don't know what this content creator talks about primarily, but I'm just going off of things I've seen already. Like if you're talking and complaining about those kinds of things impacting your life negatively because you are fat, the fact of the matter is you can change that about yourself. Like, and most of the time you can change that about yourself. Might it take more resources and tools and things like that for certain people? Yeah, like I had weight loss surgery to lose weight and all of that, but like I could change it. I think that's where a lot of people come from when they are critiquing the fat activism movement. It's not so much like, it's more from a place of like, why are you complaining about this when it's something that you can change about yourself and not have to deal with anymore? Because a lot of times they do bring up, like this creator did, racism, things like that, and they compare it to fat phobia and say it's along the same lines, which it is not, because you cannot change your race, can change being fat. And like, if that makes me a fat phobic person for believing that, then like, so be it, I guess. But I agree with the original commenter that they were responding to in saying that like, it's a choice either way to like stay fat or to not stay fat. And like, whichever you want to do, like go for it, but don't be mean to other people for making the decision that you don't agree with. Like, I don't care if people stay fat or not. I really don't. What I do care about is them spewing things that just are not true online, and also just creating more of an us versus them mentality in terms of like fat people and less fat people or thin people. I don't like that. I think that's silly. I also think a lot of what they say is really damaging to the, like I've said a million times, like the probable like young girls and women who watch this kind of content. As it comes to like the weight cycling conversation, I understand that like being put on a diet or things like that when you're super young and you really don't know what's going on, I understand like the mental effects of that, and I understand that constantly going on different crash diets and stuff, I'm pretty sure it can like damage your metabolism, and I could be wrong on that. If I am, let me know please. But I do know that diet cycling can be really dangerous. But I do know also that there are ways to rectify that, and that it's not just something that you should sit in and just be like, oh, well, I can't change. Like, I just think that's illogical. I mean, I was put on various diets growing up as a kid, and I think more than it prevented me from losing weight in the long run, I think it more just like created like a mental block for me of like, oh, I've tried all these things like ever since I was a kid and none of it worked. So like, I must just be meant to be this way. And for me, when I finally had weight loss surgery and went through the bariatric program along with it and all of that, like for me, really rewired my brain of like, oh, I can do this. Like I can lose weight. I can be a healthy, strong person. And which was something I always wanted to be. And so I will never, ever take that for granted ever. But I do understand that if not physically, I do think that diet cycling and things like that can create like a mental block for a lot of people, and overcoming that is really hard. And so I think a lot of what we're seeing when fat activists talk about that part of it and weight cycling and stuff is more of like projection of their insecurities of not being able to maybe overcome that mental block, and or just them not wanting to and justifying it, because it is uncomfortable and it is hard and it's a lot of work, but in my opinion, it's worth it. And yeah, so I just thought this was interesting, an interesting conversation about fatness being a choice and all of that. So let's go on to the next one. Okay, so this is going to be another multi-parter because it has to do with Coachella. And I know Coachella happened in like April, but there's a lot going on in my life in April, so I couldn't talk about this, and I just forgot that this whole thing happened, and so we're going to talk about it now for a minute.
Just me patiently waiting to see who is going to start the discourse around a certain plus-size brand hosting at Coachella that makes into a size 30, and yet out of how many influencers, maybe one is a size 20? Just, it's a choice. It's a choice. It's a choice.
Let's talk about how these are the people that Torrid, a brand that serves plus-size people and goes up to a size 30. This is the group that they invited to Coachella. I have so much to say about this, so stick with me because it's probably going to be long. I'm not familiar with any of these influencers, which should tell you something because I have been in the plus-size content making space on TikTok since 2020 and just in general from like YouTube and Instagram since 2016. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. I am more of like a fat liberation, fighting for inclusivity, that type of creator. If I haven't heard of you, that is probably because that is not your jam. I'm not saying that that's the case all the time, but if you haven't popped up on my pages in 9 years, you're probably not making content about size inclusivity or fat liberation. So I looked some of these people up just out of sheer curiosity. This person has in their bio that they are a size 12. This person has a pinned video that is talking about, if this is a size 10, I'll try it on. Not saying that this is necessarily her regular size because it looks like they were at like a thrift store. But if you're trying on a size 10, I'm going to guess that you're probably at least like maybe a 12. This person labels their OOTDs as mid-size. And granted, not all of these influencers had their sizes like readily available on their page. I will say that I believe this was the largest person that I could find that says that they wear a 16 to 18. But what I did notice about a majority of them is that in their bios, they label themselves as curvy, not plus size, not fat, not any sort of like activism sort of speak, curvy, which signals to me that either they recognize that they are too small to be using like the plus size label, or they recognize that they can wear straight size clothing and don't need to be relegated to the few plus size brands that we have. So they use that terminology, or it's that they're not active in the fat activism space, so they don't know what terminology they're supposed to use for themselves. So my issue with this is kind of twofold. Torrid, if you are a brand that carries up to a size 30, why is everyone that you're inviting to an event under a size 18? And this is not like a one-off thing. I don't think that I have ever, and this is including plus size brands, it is so rare for me to see an influencer at events that is over a size 24. And I know for myself, like granted, I only have like 63,000 followers or something on TikTok. I have never gotten invited to an event. And I know people could argue like, oh, you don't have enough of a following to be invited to these events. But one of the people who was at Coachella with Torrid only has 70-something thousand followers. So like, not all that big of a difference. We're not picking people with millions of followers here. But that also kind of feeds into my second issue, which is people really only push forward voices for the quote unquote plus size community that are at the smaller end of the fatness spectrum. How many influencers do you know that are a size 4X, 5X? How many do you know are popular, talk about size inclusivity, and have 500,000 followers? How many can you name? Probably not many. So not only is there an issue with plus size people gravitating more towards the more socially acceptable body types, even though they're plus size, there's also an issue with brands only caring about the same type of bodies, even when they're a brand who's supposed to care about people up to a size 30. So I would ask, one, all of you go follow some creators that are over a size 24. And two, brands. If you are a plus size brand, start diversifying who you're inviting to events and make sure you're including different body types and not just people who are a size 10 to 16.
If you don't know what happened, Torrid, Coachella, for me, has become less of a music festival and more of like the influencer brand trip Olympics. Like that's what I view it as. And so Torrid, a very notable plus size fashion retailer, did a brand trip with a lot of plus size fashion influencers, and I'm going to call them that because that's what they are, to Coachella. And so first of all, when I saw that, I was like, that's really cool, because I don't think I'd ever seen a only plus size retailer brand ever do a brand trip to Coachella. It's always been brands that never carry even like a size 14 or 16, like from what I've understood. So like when I saw that Torrid took influencers to Coachella, I personally thought it was very cool. But obviously fat activism doing what fat activism does, they couldn't see that that was just progress in itself, just Torrid being there in general. They had to go on and be like, they didn't bring people who were physically big enough, like who were big enough to accurately represent the brand. And do I think Torrid could have done probably with inviting someone who was maybe like a size like 22, 24? Yes. But also I watching all of this was just so silly to me, because I'm like, you don't know who they invited and who said no. Because also the conversation surrounding Torrid as a brand within the plus size fashion community has been so bad, like so not in Torrid's favor for such a long time up until like this year, because they just went very bad direction creatively, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinions. Maybe some people just didn't want to work with them and didn't want to be associated with them. And also coming from a social media standpoint, like the influencers that they did bring, yeah, numbers may not have been as much of a factor, but all of them have like a very curated aesthetic on their Instagram and things like that. And I'm not saying that there aren't more plus size influencers who don't have that, but like I feel like Torrid was looking for a very specific image aesthetically, not with body size, and that's what they went with. There's so many factors as to why like bigger influencers, physically bigger influencers might not have been there, but I just think the whole every conversation I see surrounding fashion industry and like including more plus size people in it from fat activists to me is just so frustrating. Because as someone who is admittedly like a big nerd about fashion and the fashion industry and how it works and stuff, I can look at this objectively and be like, the fact that fat people and plus size people are even being included at all is a huge step forward. The fact that it's not all people who are like rail thin, unattainably thin, like, and that there are people who are plus size, who are even just mid-size or whatever, being included in these things is such a huge step forward. And I do know that we are seeing issues with retailers taking out their plus size sections in physical stores, which I do not like that. Overall, like, it's, to me, the inclusion of plus size people in things like this, no matter what size they are of plus size, is a huge step forward to me. And like I talked about that with the Victoria's Secret fashion show too. Like people were like, oh, they picked Ashley Graham because she's the least plus size of the plus size models that exist. And I'm like, but it's a huge deal that she was there at all. Like, do you not, you have to look at it in the context of everything before. Even seeing Torrid as a brand at Coachella for me was a big deal, because as someone who grew up with like 2010s Tumblr, where Coachella was like our Olympics, right? I never, like, it would have done so much for me as like a young girl seeing influencers, plus size influencers, mid plus size, who cares? Just Torrid at Coachella. Okay, that would have done so much for me mentally in terms of like where, because of how I viewed people on social media at the time and all of that. And so like, that's how I look at this, is like, this was such a huge step forward just as a whole, that I think it's okay to be like, hey, maybe next year, like, bring someone who's above a size 20, like, or like a size 22, 24, you know what I mean? Like, great start. And I'm not one to defend a brand ever, but like, I just think as a concept, this was a huge step forward. Obviously, like they did with the Victoria's Secret fashion show, they can't be happy because the person wasn't fat enough. I thought that the creator pointing out that all the influencers who went had like curvy in their bio and not plus size or whatever was really funny, because I'm like, why do you think that is? Do you know how many actually plus size influencers I have seen who are like on, I guess, the smaller end of the quote unquote fatness spectrum, who have said that they do not feel comfortable calling themselves plus size, even though that's what they are, because of how picky people in the fat activism, fat liberation community are about the people who use that term? Like, the policing of verbiage is crazy. Crazy town, crazy work. And also just the fact that she's like, they didn't invite me. I'm like, oh, that's where this is coming from. I got your number now, baby. Like, I understand that now. And yeah, I don't know. I just thought this whole conversation around Coachella and Torrid was really silly, because for me personally, I saw it as like a net positive. And yeah, and some of those creators that went are smaller than I am, but I'm like, this is cool. Because also Torrid, yes, they sell up to a size 30, but they sell from a size like 10 or 12, I think. That's advertising for them too. So I don't know. I think I'm looking at this from like a marketing, social media marketing standpoint too. But this whole issue, quote unquote issue, just seemed silly to me. I'm gonna end this here. And that's all I have to say about all of that. If you made it this far, leave a dress emoji, because we talked about Torrid. Let me know what you think down below. Thank you to Akiflow for sponsoring today's video. And thank you to you guys for continuing to like just watch me and deal with me when I don't post for almost a whole month. Thank you so much for doing that. Remember to be kind to yourself, be kind to others, drink your water, take your meds if you need them, and I will see you in the next one. Okay, bye.